how do you get that connection? How do you stay connected? How do you stay relevant? How do you stay in the here and now in the conversations that are being had online? And one thing I would say is that um, before we talk about how to stay connected, so to take the first step forward, you almost need to take a step back, because let's face it, you can't continue with the type of posts that you were publishing beforehand, or maybe risk of seeming ignorant to what's currently happening both locally and across the world. And the world is changing day by day, and it can be very difficult to figure out what's the right thing to post, maybe what's the wrong thing to post. And um, you may also need to if you have planned content, if you have a content calendar coming up or planned campaigns, you may need to postpone them, or pause them, or at the bare minimum, review everything that you had planned and ask yourself the question, does this content feel relevant to my audience right now? And that may come down to actually rethinking your overall social media strategy, or tweaking it to some degree, because um, it may not be relevant anymore because your brand or your business has moved, or your consumers have changed, and what you were going to say isn't relevant anymore, and it needs to be refocused. And to help you refocus that, I've developed a 4-point plan with 4 key elements to it, to help you um, find relevance and stay connected to your consumers during this period. So the first step, and the first thing I would recommend you do is, even now as we're moving out of lockdown and towards some normality, um, businesses have started to reopen and the economy has started to move. Is the first thing I would do is monitor your social media audience closely, monitor what's going on in the media, and that'll give you a better understanding as to what's happening, and understanding your audience's feelings, and what's bringing stress to them, what's causing anxiety to them, what's even causing joy to your followers, or potential followers, or even potential customers. And how do you do that? At a basic level is to be active on those channels. Search through Facebook, search through Instagram, search hashtags, follow media brands that have their fingers on the pulse, read their comments, um, look at what's trending online, look at what's trending on Twitter, look at what's trending on Google Trends. If you Google Trends, you'll see the topics that have been trending over the past month. See what people are talking about, and listen, just listen. You can take that to the next level, and use social listening tools such as BuzzSumo or Sprout Social. And they will give you maybe a more effective or a deeper insight into the discussions that are being had on social media. And it'll give you, I suppose, a much deeper insight into how often people are talking about this, whether they're negative or positive. And one thing I would say is, if you are going to contribute to the conversation, no business wants to give off the impression that they're just jumping on the bandwagon and commenting on this crisis for the sake of maybe just being more visible, or for some maybe strange marketing purpose. But by keeping your finger on the pulse of the conversation, and applying those insights, whether you got them through the advanced or premium tools, or whether you pick them up through the manual trawling through comments and so on, um, if you get a good insight, you can show your brand to be more considerate, and you can become a valuable contributor to the conversation. Because these tools can analyze millions of social media messages in seconds almost. You search for a keyword, you search for a hashtag, and that gives you an insight into all these different types of conversations that are being had. A good example of that is actually restaurant and pub chain Brewdog. They used tools like this very early on in lockdown, and discovered lots of people were looking for trivia and quizzes and things to do when they were basically bored. They couldn't go out at the weekend or whatever. And Brewdog positioned themselves as entertainers during COVID-19 and during lockdown. They set up a platform where their community could play trivia, quizzes, watch live music, watch comedy shows. They could, and I suppose all the while, Brewdog were letting them know that they could order their products from their website, which is a very smart plan, but it's a plan that didn't make them look like they were taking advantage of of this situation. It showed that they were caring and being helpful during lockdown and so on. So a real good example of listening before they took action. The second key pillar is all about empathy, and COVID-19 has affected and is still affecting lots and lots of people in lots of different ways. And one thing I would say is to think outside your own situation, have empathy for other people, have empathy for your followers, and offer that compassion. You don't have to mention COVID-19 explicitly in all of your content, but do take into consideration the tone of your posts, of your captions, and maybe how it can be interpreted by people facing a much more different reality than you might be facing. And obviously remember, people have lost jobs, people have lost loved ones, and people are in different situations, and try to use those experiences, whether they're your own or whether that you've read about them, to make your content more authentic and more relevant. I'm sure everyone here is aware of the brand 3M. Their logo I've seen on lots of personal protection equipment in hospitals, and I've seen this on the news and so on. And as you can imagine, they were experiencing unprecedented demand for their PPE gear, and the brand could have used this as an opportunity for some self-promotion as to maybe the quantities and the speed that they were delivering some of this PPE gear to hospitals and private clinics and key workers and so on. But what they didn't, their messaging remained educational, it remained sensitive, it showed empathy, it was calm, and it was reassuring to the public, and it wasn't self-promotional at all. And that consistency and dedication to being helpful, I think, is critical during these uncertain times, because customers will reward you tenfold if they know that they can trust your brand. And 3M were showing a real trusting position and a real empathetic position, and that empathy really breeds trust. And as I said, that if people trust your brand, they're going to recommend you, they're going to potentially buy from you, and so on. So showing empathy is key. Finding your place is all about relevance, really, how you can be relevant. And once you have done your research and listened to your audience and looked at the conversations your customers are having and what's going on in the media and maybe what similar businesses or big brands are doing, you can try and determine the role that your business can play. And most importantly, look at what your audience needs and wants during this time. What type of content are they looking for? And whether that's providing some sort of free content to help, if you're a fitness studio, could you provide free yoga or mindfulness classes to help calm the anxiety? Can you provide effective tips for working from home or homeschooling, or even people are at home and people are looking to invest at the minute? Could you provide investment tips if you're a financial institution? Can you offer businesses advice on funding, or on even, Martin Lewis has come to prominence and his brand Money Saving Expert, because he has been extremely helpful and not promotional at all to lots of businesses and people during this time. So instead of thinking about driving sales and leads and traffic to your website, think of how you can be of help, and finding your place in this crisis as to how you can help your audience is key. And that leads on to leading with usefulness and not promotion. Focus on providing value to your audience. Think of them as people and as human beings and not as customers. And I think that's really one of the key messages here is think of them as humans. Think of them as people, not customers, not that they're going to buy from you. Think of them as just humans. And one thing I would say is that people can you almost smell opportunistic businesses from a mile away. And the nature of social media these days is that they're not afraid to call you out. Seen recently a business that had reopened and was given a 2.5% discount to NHS workers, and a lot of people thought that wasn't very generous at all, and they got absolutely slated for it. So you need to really think about usefulness, and not self-promotion, and not really using this as an opportunity to promote, but using it as an opportunity to be helpful or useful.